Hilton brings you new ways to stay, with experiences that let you capture the glory days. Introducing the Graduate Hotels. Each inspired by local college towns, these stays are always original and never boring. Get in touch with traditions all across the country and enjoy a stay that's a class above the rest. Book at Graduate Hotels with Hilton Honors Points at Hilton.com. It's a win-win. Hilton, for the stay.
Your weekend is not complete without the First Lady of New York Radio. It's the Joan Hamburg Show. Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Who better to talk to during the holidays than my pal Kathie Lee? And Kathie Lee, in our own market for so many years, Regis and Kathie, and then on the Today Show, Hoda and Kathie, huge successes. But then one day, Kathie Lee said, I love you, but I'm out of here. And she took herself off to Nashville, where she started a whole new life. Now, a lot of people don't realize Kathie Lee is a playwright. She writes music, songs. She's really a Renaissance woman. Incredible. So, but she left us to a different place, a different area. Very happy in Nashville. And she's seen a lot of good things in this year. Her children both got married. And many of you who were her fans sort of watched her kids grow up. And Kathie just is a marvel. She's always had incredible religious roots, way back from the time she was just a kid and heard Billy Graham. She's always been very spiritual. She's a fascinating person, and I'm looking forward to her sharing the life and loves of Kathie Lee Gifford, and also a wonderful actor. You're going to really enjoy it, Rob McClure, and hear his story. So come on, everyone. We need you to be with us. Straight ahead, the Joan Hamburg Show. And don't forget, we do this every Sunday beginning at 2 o'clock.
The First Lady of New York Radio, Joan Hamburg. Entertaining and informative. Talk Radio 77 WABC.
When my old friend Kathie Lee Gifford announced that she was leaving New York to go to Nashville, Tennessee, I can't say we were shocked, but we were shocked because Kathie has had and continues to have a brilliant career. Wonderful kids, wonderful friends, great work. And we thought she can't leave because she was already, for 10, 11 years on the Today Show with Hoda, whom we love. They became great friends, and the show reflected that kind of honesty and friendship and fun. It was everything that people wanted from their pals, only they were their television pals. So, Kathie, we'll go back to that time. And by the way, Kathie has written a new book called The Jesus I Know, and she talks to so many people, and they're people you know, about their faith and about how God came into their lives. Even people with terrible challenges, as you'll find out, most people have challenges. Mm-hmm. But let's go back to when the Today Show was booming, when you got that hour or two with Hoda, and everything seemed great, right?
Yes.
So
yes. Well, first of all, it's great to talk to you, Joan. I adore you, and I'm happy to be back with your listeners who've been such faithful friends to me through all the years. Yes, it's huge change in my life now. The 11 years with Hoda were amazing. You know, I never won an Emmy with Regis. I was nominated like 50 times, but four of them when I joined Hoda. So, and. You never know. But anyway, yes, we're still dear friends. I saw her last week when I started my book tour, and we'll be friends forever, like I was with Regis until the Lord took him to that great talk show in the sky. But Yes. What happened was that we weren't very good at the beginning. I knew we could be, but Hoda was such a trained, excellent journalist that she had, if she was going to be a talk show hostess with me, she needed to get rid of all that stuff. You know?
Right.
Get the IFB out of your ear, throw away the cards, baby, and let life happen.
Exactly.
You know, there's nothing duller on television than two people talking that have somebody else talking to them in their ear.
I know.
You know, it's just ridiculous. So anyway, I know it's necessary for news and that sort of thing, but for a talk show, no, get rid of it. So she finally did, and then the Hoda that has emerged began to just blossom. So yeah, I expected to stay a year, stayed 11, but then all of a sudden, you know, Joan, I started to do a movie down here. I actually wrote it for Craig Ferguson and me to do. And he's one of my dear friends, and I wrote a movie about him, for him, called Then Came You, that people can still see, download. And it's a lot of fun. We shot it in the Highlands of Scotland. But while I was getting ready to shoot it, I was co-writing all the music for it down here in Nashville for a year with the great Brett James. So I kept flying back and forth. And I just thought when I'd get on the plane to go back to New York on Sunday nights, I'd go, why am I so happy here? And it dawned on me, I'm joyful down here. It's a completely different culture than what the Northeast has become. And I've been watching it happen in the big cities in America, sadly, for the last, 15 or so years, this mean-spiritedness that's emerging, that callousness, this disregard for each other's humanity, this lack of civility, so much anger, and it's on the surface, and it doesn't take much, and the next thing you know, people are dead. And I just thought, you know, the only way people talk to each other these days is screaming at each other, and nothing's ever accomplished that way. So I just realized that my soul was getting sucked dry. There is a culture of chaos in the Northeast, and I'd come down here, and there's a culture of kindness. And my soul was just responding to it. And there's people who believe in God and are vocal about it, people who love their country and they're vocal about it. You know, 2 times I went through an election cycle down here. And people would say to me, Kath, after you vote, let's get together and have a drink and write a song. They didn't tell me how to vote. They don't tell you how to think here. And they certainly don't cancel you if they don't agree with you on something. I mean, that's the antithesis of the way Jesus taught us to live our lives. Jesus was the most welcoming, radically loving human being the world has ever seen or ever will see. And this book is about that. Jesus never canceled anybody. He went out of his way to find the unloved, to find the lost, to find the broken and the wounded and the hopeless, and he gave them life, new life. And that's what we as his believers are supposed to do too. We're not supposed to yell at people, tell them they're going to hell if they don't believe in him. We're supposed to love them in his name. So, I mean, that's the way I believe, and I've tried to live my life. But this book is 25 people who see things differently than I do. And that's what I wanted to share, because our common ground with people is what is sacred to both of us. And that's the way you start a dialogue. And so in this book, I talk to Scientologists, I talk to Sikhs, I talk to Hindus, I talk to atheists and agnostics and broken-hearted Catholics over the scandals in the Catholic Church, and confused Baptists who still think that Jesus didn't drink wine, you know, that kind of thing. Right. But you find out that everybody's on their own unique journey, because God made us all so uniquely. This cookie-cutter world people are trying to make, as if that's going to be nirvana, when we all believe the same way, we all look the same way, we all vote the same way. I don't want to live in a world like that. I want to grow. I want to learn from people.
Which you have always done. But you once told me, when I had said to you, when did this start? And, you know, because that isn't the usual for a youngster to be so touched by this early on. And you told me that I think you were at a Billy Graham something. He had done a film, and that
exactly
you were
right.
a kid. You were what?
I was 12.
12. And that
I was 12 years old.
It reached you in a really powerful way.
You know why, Joan? Because that's the way God reaches everybody. I was not a church-going girl. I still don't love organized religion. There's so much wrong with it. There's wonderful people that are involved in it, but it's like New York. There are wonderful people there, but the culture is malignant. You know what I mean? So the church. Listen, I was kicked out of the Brownies when I was 8. I was kicked out of Sunday school when I was 12, kicked out of the America's Junior Miss pageant when I was 17 because it was my life of crime, okay? Because I had a mind and I used it. When I was 12 years old, I was sitting in a movie theater watching this movie. Now, God met me at a movie theater. Why? Because all I ever wanted to be was an actress and a singer and a writer and a storyteller. And so God met me right there at the point of my interest and my need. There are so many people out there who would never watch a Billy Graham crusade on TV and come to know Jesus, or go to church, or But I heard the name of Yeshua. I'm Jewish, and I heard the name of Yeshua say to me, Kathie, I love you, and if you trust me, I'll make something beautiful out of your life. And I couldn't have run down that aisle fast enough to accept his invitation. And, Joan, it's the greatest decision I ever made in my whole life. Friends come and go. Trends come and go. Politics change. But the Bible in Hebrew says Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. I want to build myself, my life and my self-work, my family, everything on that rock, that foundation that will never change regardless of the storms of life. And you've known a lot of my storms. You've been with me through most of them.
Well, that's what people have. You know, they see you, Kathie, they see your success with Regis, with Hoda, with your songs. I saw your play. You did off-Broadway, Broadway. Kathie is really gifted, multi-talented. And people can't imagine that you had aggravation, pain, heartache in your life. And you did.
Right.
And was it faith that got you through it? Was it friends?
Every bit of it.
Like, is that what held your hand?
You know, it's all you're talking about. It was people like you that I would go on the air, and you were my friend in the sense that you believed me. You knew I had nothing to do with sweatshops. You knew that I hadn't caused.
Wait, I want you just to explain, because a lot of people don't remember. I remember that distinctly.
Oh,
that
yes,
Kathie,
I was accused.
Doing great, had her own line of clothing, was doing everything, and out of the blue, someone comes and says, hey, forget about all the stuff she's talking about. She has children, sweatshops, the whole thing. And you didn't cave. You didn't cave in at all.
No, he stood up in Congress and accused me of that. And we were 1 month away from opening up Cassidy's Place in New York City during the pandemic, the AIDS and the crack pandemic. $14 million, Frank and I built to build a home for the children. That's still going in New York City,
right.
And all these years later, and. No, it obviously was not true, but it was a so-called civil rights advocate or crusader, trying to save people from sweatshop. No, the man worked for Unite, the garment union,
right.
And they were trying to unionize Walmart. And so So anyway, you're right. I stood up to bullies. When I discovered that there really were sweatshops out there, even though I had none, I said, okay, then Lord, use me. Use this awful, awful desert season in my life to bring streams of water to people. And we got laws changed. We passed a law up in Albany called the Hot Goods Bill. I mean, that's the story of my life, how God takes the ashes of things and he makes beauty out of it if we let him.
I was going to say, you welcomed him. And I remember when you were married to Frank Gifford, a hero in this country, a hero to you and the children. And when you found out that he had fallen off the path for a short while, and I remember you saying to me when you found out that Frank was involved, not really involved, but whatever.
No, he was unfaithful. He was
unfaithful. And you said, "This is almost killing me."
Yeah, I had almost destroyed me. The year before we'd battled the sweatshops together, and he was my hero. Oh my gosh, he was. And a year later, it's discovered that the tabloids had set him up with a woman at the Regency Hotel. Pictures, the whole thing, recordings, and it was
a nightmare.
He was my best friend. And you know what? I was able to forgive him immediately because God showed me in that first instant everything that God has ever forgiven me for. And there are some doozies. Went right in front of like a screen, like a scrawling on a screen in front of my eyes. And the Lord said, Kathie, you must forgive as I have forgiven you. And I said, yes, Lord. And I forgave him. Now, it took a long time to get back to normal. We had a lot of work to do. And I've got scars from it still. I'll never forget that betrayal. It leaves emotional scars, maybe not physical, but they're there. But we were able to save our family, our marriage, by the grace of God. But you said, how did I get through? On my knees. I remember I went to a gentleman in New York who had been our premarital counselor, and he said, Kathie, if you can't forgive your husband, because I was having trouble forgiving Frank for his behavior afterwards, because I forgave him so quickly, Joan, he thought it hadn't hurt me.
Right.
And I said, are you crazy? He thought we're back to normal. So I was having trouble with that. And this man said to me, if you can't forgive your husband, forgive your children's father. It was so genius.
That was a really good, important thing to say.
Yeah, it got my eyes off me. And also, Cardinal O'Connell said to me, Kathie, you just remember this, because he was very loving during the sweatshop situation to me. Very loving. Now, I hadn't heard a kind word from anybody until he saw me privately and just put his arms out to me and just said, Kathie. And I've gotten his arms, and he said, Kathie, remember this. Our Lord did not change this world so much through his miracles as he did through his suffering. And if you will suffer this injustice being done to you for his name's sake, great, great, great good will come from it. Again, it's always we have to get our eyes off us. So that's how I've gotten through. I've got dear friends, but they also are like-minded in my faith. My friends are not just going to say, I'm thinking of you, I'm sending good thoughts.
Right, not helpful.
They are on their knees before God Almighty praying for me. They're my prayer warriors. So, it's a whole community of faith-believing people that don't necessarily go to a building once for an hour, once a week,
right, to church,
and talk alike, or synagogue, or anything. It's the word church in Greek is ekklesia, and it means a movement. It's a movement, a gathering of people moving in the Holy Spirit. There were no, in the first century A.D., the first believers in Jesus were called the Way, followers of the Way. Well, they were being persecuted. They were hiding. They were meeting in each other's homes. There was no church. There was no building to go to. So, we aren't very, I'm sorry, I'm getting another call. Forgive me. Okay. We aren't very, what's the word? There's a lot of biblical illiteracy. A lot of it in our culture, and that's why I write so many books about it, Joan. Because you know me, I go to Israel and I study rabbinically, and a lot of the stories in this new book, The Jesus I Know, are people that I took on these rabbinical trips to Israel.
You even have
one
a
of
rabbi.
My favorites. Well, he co-wrote the Rock the Road and the Rabbi with me. Yeah, he's a brilliant, brilliant teacher. But one for your listeners would probably be an interesting one. My friend David Pomerantz, whom I've written so many songs with, and all the Broadway stuff that I've done. He's part of my team with all of that. He's a Jewish guy, grew up a Jew, will always be a Jew, but took on Scientology 40-some years ago, married a Catholic girl who took on Scientology. And then they adopted a son as a baby and raised him in Scientology. And I love these people. So I invited them to Israel with me. We had an amazing 10 days there. And I just watched how hearing the word of God in the places where these stories actually took place and studying the word of God rabbinically, how it transformed them. Their son, their 14-year-old son at that time, was the first one to jump into the Jordan River and get baptized. So it's stories like that. But if I hadn't loved those people from the beginning and created a bond of trust and friendship between them, they wouldn't have gone on that trip with me. You have to start with loving people first.
And that's what you've always done.
I've tried, honey. I'm not perfect by any means. No. My kids haven't written their books yet.
No, listen, we're all waiting for our kids. I used to say to my kids, hey, you know what? You'll go to your own shrink when you get to a certain age. You'll tell him or her anything you want to tell them. But meanwhile, cool it, because we don't want to know.
I always say to my kids, if you want to get everything in my will, don't you dare write a book until I'm dead. I won't give a rip then.
That's sure, and they laugh. But Kathie Lee Gifford, who has left the city of New York to move to Nashville, which is actually, for Kathie, who music is part of her soul, this is a city that has a wonderful sound all the time.
Yes.
And she's thriving there. And did I read that you have a new man in your life, or was that gossip?
No, well, it's not the one they keep talking about. That was 3 years ago. I had like 3 days with him. No, it's not. I met a sweetheart of a man. He's brilliant. He's, this season of my life, you want something different. When I married Frank, I was 33 years old, and he was the right man for me, and I loved him dearly. And now this new person that God brought into my life, in fact, I hear him come through the door, is it's just fun. Nashville's fun. Our work is fun. My life is good and fun, and I'm grateful. Forever grateful.
Is he in the music world?
That's all I'm saying, Missy. Okay. You're not getting anything out of me.
Okay. But we're getting out of you that you're happy. And that
I'm happy. Yes. Thank you so much,
you
darling.
You love living there. All right, Kathie.
You have a beautiful holiday season, and I look forward to talking to you in the new year.
You too, honey. And love to everyone, and we'll talk soon. Happy Christmas. That's Kathie Lee Gifford. I'm Joan Hamburg, and Kathie is thriving. So we'll hear more from her. Take care. We'll talk again. I'm Joan Hamburg, and you're listening to WABC.
Taking you behind the curtain. It's the Joan Hamburg Show. Talk Radio 77 WABC.
We've all been a little down, no matter who we are. Everyone's got some kind of issue. This pandemic is lasting so long. And then my daughter and I took ourselves to see Mrs. Doubtfire, the new musical comedy at the Sondheim Theater. And I have to tell you, we laughed. And we laughed. And we had such a good time. It was such a relief. And then my producer went to see it last minute. And she works all day from early in the morning, like everyone here. And, got out late, had to go home, and had such a good time. It made her so happy. It was just letting yourself sit there. And Rob McClure, who is the lead, one of the leads, and you've seen him in so many major shows, in Beetlejuice and Something Rotten, and more. You were so... I have Rob with me as a guest today, and Rob McClure, you were so good in this show. You're so good in all the shows, but it was unbelievable to watch you move like you did. And are you having fun?
Oh, my gosh. First of all, thank you so much. I'm so thrilled that it was able to be a tonic for you, as it is being found to be for many. But thanks, Joan. Yeah, I'm having the time of my life. It's been a long time coming. We were lucky enough to do 3 previews 19 months ago in March of 2020, and then COVID hit, and we had to put the show on a shelf for 19 months, and it's so refreshing to be back. And 19 months ago we set out to make a show about the lengths to which you'd go to be with those you love, and we're finding that message is resonating more now than ever in a way that people kind of couldn't imagine when we set out.
Right, because the character that Rob plays is a married guy, an actor, of course, like many actors, a struggling actor.
Yes.
And he, lives out his acting fantasies by being a million things to his kids, who are perfectly enchanted by Dad. Your wife in the play is disenchanted. She's had enough. So she decides she needs a divorce. You have to leave. And I'm not going to tell the whole story, but you ended up in disguise as a woman applying for a nanny job so that you can be with your kids.
Yeah.
And I don't think, should we tell a little more than that? Or that's enough?
I think that was pretty darn good. Well done. Yeah, I mean, this is about a dad who will do anything to be with his kids. And yeah, the musical focuses on, that he's not, he might be a good friend and buddy to his kids, but he's not necessarily the best husband material at the beginning of the play. And over the course of this sort of crazy charade, they all learn a whole lot about what it means to be a good parent and a good partner. And, when the film came out in '93 and now the musical, it was one of the few stories for children that didn't establish that the happy ending has to be the parents getting back together. Because up until then, that was sort of the only thing around, Parent Trap and things like that, where the kids conspired to get mom and dad to fall back in love. And Mrs. Doubtfire was kind of the first thing to come along and say, you know what, maybe you're all going to be better for the parents being divorced, and then rather than finding ways to make them stay together, maybe it's better to redefine family. And that's what I think the musical has taken and expanded really beautifully. Right.
And, the night I was there was a family across the aisle with 6 kids, including a 3-year-old. I thought that was pretty surprising.
Yeah,
but at intermission, I went up to them and I said, I'm just curious. Tell me, kids, what do you think? And the kids had such a good time. They loved all the pratfalls and all the sight gags.
Of course. Yeah.
I mean, and the truth is, that's what we love too. We were in the mood for that.
Yeah.
This is the right time. I'm talking to Rob McClure, who's starring he is Mrs. Doubtfire, among other things, in this play. So you've had an interesting career, a little bit different from a lot of actors, because you started in your high school, where you had near you the Paper Mill Playhouse, one of our favorite theater sources, and that really changed your life.
For sure. I will often say that Paper Mill Playhouse changed my life, and they did. Their education director, a woman named Susan Spidell, created a program along with somebody named Mickey McNanny-Damian, a brilliant teacher and educator who we lost just a few years ago. But her and Susie Spidell created something called the Rising Star Awards, which is basically like the New Jersey High School Tony Awards. And they scooped me up my senior year of high school, and I won that award, which got me a scholarship to their summer teaching conservatory, which was sort of my first formal training in performance, and changed my life. And it was a production there of a play called I'm Not Rappaport with Judd Hirsch and Ben Vereen that I was lucky enough to be a part of, that then transferred to Broadway and gave me my Broadway debut in 2002.
That was unbelievable, because you weren't living the New York life as a starving actor, working as a waiter.
No, I was a teaching artist directing, the musical at my old high school. And and I was actually, they cast me in the ensemble of Carousel. That was my first professional show in Paper Mill in 2000. And it changed my life. I got to share a dressing room with the late, great Eddie Bracken, who taught me more about this industry than anybody I could possibly imagine.
And did you get an equity card with all that?
I did. Yes, I did. That was the beginning. And I cherished it. I was actually working in the box office. After Carousel, I didn't want to leave the building. So I got a job in their box office. And when I'm Not Rappaport came along, they asked me to understudy. And I said, well, you know, at the time it was non-union. I got my union card when I was in I'm Not Rappaport. And I said, well, the non-union understudy salary, I'm making more working in the box office. Can I keep my box office job and I'll understudy from the box office? If you need me to go on, call my phone extension. I'll come back and go on. And they let me. So I was understudying from the box office. And then we got word that that show was transferring to Broadway, and they let me out of the box office, thankfully. And there I was.
Unbelievable. And then you were in Avenue Q.
Yes, for years, both on Broadway and on tour. Changed my life. That was and that was the first time I was able to collaborate with Kevin McCullum, the great producer, who then I got to work with in Something Rotten, and now Mrs. Doubtfire.
Right, and you did Chaplin. I mean, it's amazing because, you know, a lot of people, I'm sure, said to you, why do you want to work at the high school and teach directing or teach the kids? Why don't you just plow into the New York theater scene? But you resisted, and it was the best thing that could have happened.
Absolutely. I wasn't ready. You know, I don't think I was good enough. I think I enjoyed it and I had fun, but I think the experience of directing the musical at my old high school for 4 years made me such a better actor because it made me a better collaborator. I got a larger sense of what it takes to put on a show. You know, when the school gives you $1,000 to put on a musical with 35 kids, and you're trying to get performances out of these kids, it forces you to sort of question your own process in an ability to try and explain to them what it is you want to get out of them. And it made me better, you know, hanging upside down from the ceiling of my high school auditorium, trying to wire a moving light into an antiquated electrical grid from the 1930s.
Oh, my gosh.
You'll learn a lot, exactly. You know, and it makes you a better actor because you have a sense of the larger picture. So now when I work on Broadway and I can name, you know, what footlighting instrument we're using while Phil Rosenberg is doing our lights, you become a better collaborator.
Which is true. How did you guys deal with the pandemic? Like every actor, the pain of seeing, you know, your another opportunity, a big one on Broadway, is suddenly brought to its knees. Yeah,
I mean, we were all hit with a large dose of perspective, right? We were certainly not the only ones struggling, but we you know, it was all about scraping by. But, you know, theater people are scrappy. You know, we sign up for an unpredictable life, but my gosh, couldn't have expected this. But we were lucky in that a lot of us turned to, you know, other forms of work. A lot of things, you know, the invention of Zoom certainly helped us out. A lot of us could do sort of Zoom readings or Zoom teaching or things like that. But, you know, as grateful as I am for those innovations and for all of the art that was able to be created online and digitally and otherwise, it is not theater. It will never be theater because, as you experienced this week when you came to the show, there's something about the shared humanity of being in the room together. That exchange of live energy, which is the reason we all go and participate and work in the theater, is that electricity, that energy exchange.
Right.
And, you know, laughter, a room full of laughter is quite literally healing. It really is an amazing thing, and we're feeling it now more than ever.
Right. And physically, though, Mrs. Doubtfire is not an easy show on you.
No.
I mean, it's, you know, you have to be an acrobat to really.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, was this something you were always good at?
You know, I was always, I always loved, you know, sports, and I played baseball and basketball in high school. I don't know that I was particularly good at it, but my athleticism lent itself to playing pretend. I was always playful. You know, I was always running around with my friends and playing Ghostbusters and Ninja Turtles and running around.
And imitating.
I was always a bit of a clown. You know, the first performance I ever did in my life was impressions in my 4th grade talent show. So I've always been a mimic, but I never knew that 30 years later I'd be cashing in on those investments in that skill. But who could have predicted? Huh? And one of the people I used to mimic as a child was, of course, Robin Williams,
right? Because
he was the mimic of all mimics, you know. So between having his influence and then getting to play Charlie Chaplin really prepared me for this role. Yeah, because when you study physical comedy and physical storytelling in the way that show forced me to, it changes your DNA as a performer and really prepared me for this sort of physical storytelling when you're inhabiting more than one self on the stage.
Right, and so different from when you're doing cabaret and things like that. I know you've been at Feinstein's, and you do this, which is very rewarding and much more intimate, but totally different experience.
Totally different. A totally different set of skills. Yeah, it takes a different muscle group, you know, and Mrs. Doubtfire specifically, just getting the physical ability to maneuver that costume, you know, to maneuver those prosthetics that I'm wearing on my face and the bodysuits. So to be able to you know, I likened Chaplin to learning how to speak fluently a physical vocabulary, an unspoken vocabulary. And Mrs. Doubtfire certainly has her own set of physical behaviors and things that you know, getting all of those pieces on is not only an obstacle, but then it starts to feel like an assist. It starts to feel like part of her being. So I love costumes because they tend to sort of be the last ingredient in finding out exactly how that person moves.
Right, and they certainly did a great job, and because that's a major deal, from the hair and everything on.
Yeah, we partnered with this amazing prosthetic company, and we had to do a lot of trial and error because, you know, and that's one of the things that makes the show really thrilling is that in the movie, when Robin Williams runs in the other room and comes back as Mrs. Doubtfire 18 seconds later, we all subconsciously know that they yelled cut and he went in a trailer for 5 hours.
Exactly.
In the show, if I've got 18 seconds, I've got 18 seconds, and the audience knows I've got 18 seconds. So the stakes feel very high. And the fact that this team and my team of dressers and the hair and makeup people have pulled this off in real time is a pretty extraordinary achievement. No,
it is. And the audience loves it. And And it does happen in those few seconds. So when you're immersed in a role like this, you don't start looking at other things, at TV or anything else. This is
I don't have any extra brain cells. I have the show, and I've got a 3-year-old at home, so my brain is.
And you don't live in Manhattan, right? You don't have to tell where you live, but you're commuting.
Yeah, well, we have a house in Philadelphia where we're usually based full time. We are up here at least until I get my feet underneath me for the
it's too
so that
hard.
I don't have to lose that. Yeah. So we go home on the days off, but I actually really enjoy that commute when I'm not stretched so thin.
Right. No, now it's too hard, and you're married to an actress.
Yes, Maggie Lakis, who we met doing a production of Grease. We were Duty and Frenchie in Grease in 2005, and have been together ever since.
It's great. And do you have time to enjoy your baby, or?
Yeah. It's so funny. Daniel Hillard and Mrs. Doubtfire is sort of this crazy man-child, a bit of a Peter Pan, who won't grow up. And I found myself at rehearsal, playing with my stage kids and improvising all kinds of fun games, and some of them ended up in the show, some of them didn't, and then I would get home absolutely exhausted, and I would open the door, and then my real 3-year-old would go, "Dad, let's play pirates." And what am I going to say no to my real child, but yes to my fake children? So I found myself, pretending 21 hours out of the day.
Oh no! Did she ever see her daddy as Mrs. Doubtfire?
Not yet. Not yet.
It may be too much.
Once the COVID protocols lighten up at the theater, and I can bring her in and show her the mask and show her the hair, and she has the concept of the pretend, I would love to sort of show her the make-believe of it all. But until I can get her in there and so that she can see exactly what it is and how it works.
Right, or get her vaccinated. Confusing. She's too young right now.
She's too young right now, exactly right. Yeah.
So it's a hard thing. And what I'm fascinated by, too, is the line for all these people going to theater despite COVID and despite everything, even though the theaters, God bless them, are strict and doing a very good job on this.
Yes, they are. And, it's a fascinating thing. Our producer says this is an art of inconvenience. For the last 19 months, we've tried to find ways to bring art into your room, into your bedroom, into your living room, into your laptop, on your iPad, even your phone. But now we're asking you to get a babysitter. We're asking you to spend the money.
Right.
We're asking you to get tested. We're asking you to get vaccinated. We're asking you to come in. We're asking you to wear a mask. So the people who are making the effort to show up, we know really want to be there, and so do we. And it's just proof as to how much people need it. That this isn't. It is inconvenient, but we promise that for the people who make the effort, the reward is pretty monumental, and it's a mutual investment of us putting in the work and showing up and putting on these shows,
right,
and the people putting in the work to make themselves available to come see it. And we couldn't appreciate it more.
No, and you guys really went through, like so many actors. You had just started the new Mrs. Doubtfire.
That's
I
right.
think what three shows when Broadway shut down.
Yeah, I'll never forget it. I was on stage rehearsing with Jen Gambatese and Jerry Zaks. And our producer came in and sat everybody down and said, "Hey, leave everything right where it is and go home."
They must have been crying. It was a death in the family.
Yeah, and then we all go home for these 19 months. And what's astonishing is when we were finally let back in the theater, all of these Broadway theaters became these little time capsules of 5:30 on Thursday, March 12th, with, the notes I was receiving from Jerry that afternoon written, sitting on my desk next to, a couple pairs of spring shorts that I had bought for my daughter that she'll never wear because she's already outgrown them.
Yeah, gosh.
It's these little time capsules. It was a really strange and bizarre thing, but we're so grateful that our producer held on and found a way to let us come back.
Right, and let the audience enjoy it. Thank you so much, Rob. We loved your performance. Rob McClure.
Thank you, Joan.
Starring in Mrs. Doubtfire, the new musical comedy at the Sondheim Theater. Go see Rob and the cast. It will cheer you up, make you laugh, and we all need that. I look forward to talking to you again. I'm Joan Hamburg, and you're listening to WABC.
The First Lady of New York Radio. This is Ask Joan.
Every year at this time, we get, what can we do on New Year's Eve? People want to know whether they're alone, whether they're with families, whether they're with a partner. I'm going to give you the easiest thing, because with the virus still running rampant and spreading, you might want to think of something outside. And what my family has done for years is come to Central Park and get involved in the New Year's Eve midnight run. Fireworks, you can dance, you can even put on a costume. Every age can do it. You don't want to run? Walk. It's perfectly okay. You're going to come with a family member or a friend. Just have a good time. There is music and dancing leading up to the race. It kicks off at 11:59. It's a 4-mile race. There's a fireworks show lighting up the sky. 4,000 runners in past years, spectators in costume, and here's what you do. I promise you it's fun. You can't do 4 miles? Do a half a mile. Walk. Be part of something. And walkers can sign up at New York Roadrunners website, nyrr.org. Okay, so you may not want to go into the park and run, although I promise you it's a lot of fun. But a PR friend of ours who handles a lot of places in the Times Square area and represents a lot of small businesses had a couple of thoughts. Bond 45, you know that restaurant, guys? 221 West 46th Street. They're doing a great big New Year's celebration. They're doing entertainment, a 5-course feast, an open bar, and a private escort to view the live ball drop in Times Square. Used to be in the historic Bond clothing store, and it's an Italian kitchen, and I like the family, I like the food. And Tony DiNapoli, a big family restaurant, but you know what? It's good. When our family comes in from Latin America, that's where we take them. They love it. 147 West 43rd Street. There's also a branch on the east side. And then they told us about a place I didn't know called Hold Fast on West 46th Street. Food, cocktails, all kinds of good things. And Jasmine's Caribbean Cuisine at 371 West 46th Street. It's on Restaurant Row, and you think that you're in the Caribbean, Dominica, Antigua, St. Thomas, Trinidad, generational recipes. So we like that. Anyway, there's a lot of good things, and it's all relatively in that neighborhood. Truthfully, I could never imagine going to Times Square, waiting all those hours, standing there. People love it. And if you don't want to be in a big crush, think about one of these possibilities. All right, guys, we're coming up to news, weather, you name it. It's all here on WABC, and we do this every Sunday starting at 2 o'clock. So if you've just joined on listening, happy holidays. We wish all the best for you and yours. Happy New Year, everyone. Let's hope it's a better, brighter, bigger, healthier future. I'm Joan Hamburg for WABC.